So welcome everyone. Thank you. We're going to get started now. We have most people on the call that we were expecting. A few more people may join us on the way. A few little ground rules to get started. I'm going to be presenting for the first 25 minutes or so. If you have questions as you go through, feel free to message me. I won't be responding to those questions during the webinar, but we can go back to them at the end and go through one by one. We will have about 10 or 15 minutes at the end for Q&A. So if there's any questions which you want to talk through, we can do that. So with that said, I just want to once again say welcome. And this is exciting. This is actually our first webinar as a company. So great to have you on board for this. There probably will be some things which don't quite go well being the first webinar. So at the end of today, we're going to send out a feedback survey to all of you and hopefully collect up some thoughts from you on how we can do better next time. We have it's about 20 people on the call today, and there's a real range. We have people from companies, from startups through to big enterprises. Most people are from marketing, but we do have other functions here as well. And we also have a few of our clients here, so a very warm welcome to you, and thanks for joining us to hear more about design. So what are we going to talk about today? We're first of all going to talk about why we're here. And this is about design's rising importance. Next, we're going to talk through how to categorize and understand your own design needs. Third, we'll talk through the design landscape. And fourth, we'll help you map the needs that you have to that design landscape. And finally, there's some time for Q&A. Before we jump into the content, let me just give you a bit of background. So I'm Chris Finneral. I'm co-founder and CEO of SketchDeck. I've been working on startups for about 4 years now. And before this, I was a consultant at McKinsey & Company. And it was there that I first started to see the big challenges that many people have, myself included, for how to get great design inside companies. And with SketchDeck, I've now worked with hundreds of different clients, helping them understand the design challenges they have and figuring out how best we can solve them. A bit of background on SketchDeck. We are coming up to about 4 years, 4 years old now. The observation we have is that many design projects don't happen because the existing solutions out there are too hard, too slow, or too expensive to work with. So our mission as a company is to make design happen. And we do this with our diverse team of designers and our custom-built platform that helps get design into people's hands. And we work with hundreds of clients now, and they range from small startups all the way through to the enterprise. And we've just actually delivered our 10,000th design project. So lots of design that's happened as a result of us being here. But that's enough about us. Our goal for this webinar is to give you the confidence and tools to really evaluate your own design needs and find out how best you should solve them. And coupled with that, just a few expectations. This is not a pitch. You're not really going to hear anything more about SketchDeck for the rest of this. There'll be time for you to ask any questions you have at the end of the pitch, but we won't necessarily talk through them. We won't talk through them during the pitch itself. Another expectation, just to raise this with you, is that you likely need more design than you're aware of. And we're going to talk a little bit about that during the webinar. And finally, there isn't a single solution here that works for most clients. If you're very small, maybe there's a single solution. But once you move beyond about 50 or 100 people, especially up into the enterprise, you need to have a portfolio of design solutions to best serve the needs you have. So with that said, let's jump in and talk through the growing importance of design.
So we often look at this piece by the Design Management Institute that looks at the impact of design on business outcomes. What they did here is they measured, they looked at a selection of companies that they believed had the qualities of a company that is investing in design. And they looked at the performance of those companies and compared that to the S&P 500. And over the space of 10 years, they found these companies outperformed the S&P by over 200%. And here, the point which they are proving here and illustrating is that there is real impact that comes from design. Design is not just a nice to have. So the final piece of context I want to share with you is the emotion that design can create. So design can create the emotion of love, can create the emotion of desire. It can create the emotion, and it can create the emotion of trust. And it's these emotions create changes in people's behavior. And it's really these changes in behavior that what drives business impact. So hopefully now you can see a bit more about why design is something we should be caring about. It really can lead to increases in the impact that your company has and influence other people and bring them round to change their behaviors for the growth of your company. So now that we've understood that, let's talk about your actual design needs and how you can think through those. Before we talk about your design needs specifically, I want to introduce this concept of shadow design. So let's start with the design that you are aware of. So when you think about design, you think about the brand of your company, the design of your website, the high visibility presentations that maybe are being given at a keynote address, your big ad campaigns. This is the design that everyone is very aware of and knows about. And it's the stuff that they can easily forecast. But there is another side to design, the design that you don't often know about, the design that goes unseen by the management of companies. This is what we think of as shadow design. This is things like case studies, account updates to your clients, internal meetings, sales deck customization by the sales team, and many, many ad hoc design needs. So why do we care about this? Well, there's a real cost to shadow design. First, it leads to unproductive teams. You have people that you've hired as marketers, as product developers, and etc., who are spending their time being a designer. That is not their core skill. Next, the quality of the design work is often behind what you would want your design to be at. It can also be off-brand. And this contributes to a real negative brand impact across those pieces of work. And finally, it's a totally uncontrolled spend category. You don't know what's being done on this and what's being spent here. And that leads to it being very hard for you to make good decisions across your company. There's a quote from a client of ours that puts this very well. And Chris Rees from Icertis. He's in demand marketing at Icertis. And the way he thinks of it is they have really aggressive goals that they're trying to hit. And the opportunity cost of anyone on their team spending time doing design is terrible. They want design to go to the people who have the skills to do this. So with that said, let's think about how you should be categorizing and understanding your needs. So we actually use a worksheet similar to this with many of our clients. So what we do first is think about what function we're talking about. So here I'm just going to be thinking about marketing, but you can do this across the company. Secondarily, like which category are we thinking of here? So within marketing, you might have demand gen, product marketing, brand marketing, etc. You want to be thinking about the different places that design is needed. After that, we start listing out the different needs. So social ads, presentations, product marketing materials, case studies, etc. And for each of those needs, is it once per week? Is it once every day? Once a year? What is the frequency that we need these at? And then what is the value that each of those pieces of design is bringing to your business? And here again, we just need to be rough. Like, is this something that's a few $100s, a few $1,000s, tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars, or is it into the millions to the company? So let's look at an example here. So we're going to look at an example based on a real client of ours. And I've obscured their name just for their confidentiality. But this is based on real data. So it's a company with about 500 people. And here we were focusing on their marketing team. And the marketing team had about 30 people. They're US based and they sell enterprise software. So here's how their needs mapped out. And you can see there's many needs here, so you may have to squint at the screen. First, it's interesting to see how many needs a team of even 30 people have. There's roughly here about 20 different needs across their team, and in total around 50 projects per month that the team needed. The rows I've highlighted here in orange were the things that they previously didn't know about. This was the category of shadow design for them. But through working with them and helping them interview their different team members, we were able to uncover all the different needs that were happening that were either being done by the marketing people themselves, or they had their own side freelancers that they were shooting things off to. So we're going to leave this here for a second. This will reappear when we talk about how we match these needs to the solutions. So this moves us on to part 3. And here we want to think about the design landscape. So we see the design landscape in 4 distinct categories. There's the traditional design agency. These vary as well. There's small agencies all the way through to large international agencies. And many have distinct areas of expertise, from web design to brand to marketing. Next, there's the freelancer. This is a very large portion of the design world. They're individuals who can work with your company. They range from the lowest cost, most basic form of freelance design, all the way through to design experts that are offering their design services. Third, you have in-house. This can range from a single designer you may have in your team through to a whole agency that you've built yourself internally. The key piece here is that it's a team of employees you have brought in that you manage, you own, and you are choosing exactly how they work and training them in the way that you want to. And finally, we have this new category, the cloud agency. These are agencies which are primarily based on the internet and leverage software and remote teams to really deliver exceptional value design and are at the forefront of how design is being done today. So let's talk a little bit about the strengths and the weaknesses we see with each of these solutions. So we'll start with the strengths. So for agencies, they can be real specialists and expert in highly complex projects. For example, rebrands or big web design projects. They're extremely high touch services. They involve many in-person meetings, high levels of account management, and they can be very self-managed. You can set a goal for these agencies and many of them will go and achieve that goal for you. Next, freelancers. They're extremely flexible. These are individuals who can often work in their own ways and work within the needs you have. They can have quite unique skills. You can find some really exceptional freelancers that can do things which agencies can't even do. And they're actually the most affordable option here. There's no overhead of an agency, of an office, etc. And sometimes they have very high hourly rates, but that's often because they have some very expensive and unique skills. Third, in-house. What's a strength here is that they can be trained on the specifics of your business, and they can build core competencies for your business as well, things that differentiate you from other people, from other businesses. And if done well, they're very motivated to grow your business and develop things which are unique to you. Finally, cloud agencies. They have very high quality to cost ratios due to the efficiencies they get from software and from having remote teams. They're highly scalable. They can scale up and scale down and work on the smallest projects through to large projects. And they have low overheads, and that helps them work on these smaller projects that you may have. So let's just look at some of the weaknesses of these solutions. So agencies are very expensive. They have high overheads, and they can also be slow. Freelancers, they have limited bandwidth. It's often an individual. The most they can do is 40 hours a week, or maybe 50 or 60 if you have a hardworking one. They can be unreliable. This is an individual who's balancing their life, their other clients, So there's no spare capacity if something needs to happen. They're often very focused on a single skill. They may be an illustrator. They may be a presentation expert. They may be a analytical design expert. They often come with one very core skill. And if you work with them outside of that skill, you're not going to be getting the best work. And it takes a lot of management time. You have to manage their deliverables. They're often, they often need a lot of guidance on what's needed. In-house, there's a lot of time required to build a team in-house. You'll need management time, the time to hire, the time to onboard, and that's very, very high. There is a high cost, especially if you're located in a big city. You're likely paying a 20 to 50% premium to have people sat in your office, especially as considering the overhead of the office space, the IT equipment, etc. And they're also fixed capacity. So there can be times when things are busy that they're overworked and can't keep up. And there can be times when things are they're not so busy and they can be idle. And finally, with cloud agencies, they are generally a lower touch service than the agency counterparts. And also, given their more newness to this world, they lack the portfolio that some large specialized design agencies can have. So I do want to take a quick interlude. So one question you may be asking, is there really a case for DIY? Design it yourself. Now, I'm going to surprise you that there are a few cases when you could design things yourself. So if you have design software on your computer and you're just looking to make a few small tweaks, this is perfectly fine. Examples of this would be you've got a presentation you're giving and you want to change some numbers on a slide. That's totally cool to do that yourself. Don't necessarily need to work with a designer to get those things working. And finally, probably the rarest case is some marketers, some people in other functions are actually extremely talented designers. That's not their core focus, but they just happen to be a great designer. And there are times when it can be quicker to create something yourself than trying to get an idea out of your head and explain it to someone else. I think that often sales teams can do is they spend half a day designing a deck for a client. That's a terrible use of time. Sometimes marketing teams are creating their own social media ads. And what might start off as a simple thought turns into a multi-day process. Again, not a good use of time. And finally, if you've created some really interesting piece of content, spending the time to convert that into something that's ready to share with clients, that can take days. And again, it's not a good use of time. It's something that should be worked on with a designer. So my conclusion on designing it yourself is this sometimes a good case, but that's rarely the case. Use the right tool for the job. So we now move on to part 4, how we should be mapping your needs to the design solutions that we've just covered. So to do this, we use the design need matrix. And this is something that we've created by working with our clients over the last few years. So the design needs matrix has 2 dimensions. It's the frequency, so low frequency projects and high frequency projects, and then the value of the individual projects. So the high value projects and the low value projects. We roughly divide this matrix up at the monthly frequency point. So things that are less frequent than a month go to the low frequency category, more frequent than a month go to a high frequency category. And then the value of the projects. So the individual projects being worth more than $10,000 to the company, we class those as higher value. And things that are below $10,000, we class as lower value. These exact divisions, these can vary by company. And I should be clear, this is not an exact science. This framework is here to help guide you. And you will find things that sometimes flip between different categories. So let me show you how the needs that we talked about for the company earlier on map to this matrix. So for the low frequency, high value projects, we have the rebrand. This is something that's happening once every few years and extremely high value, as you imagine. The website design, again, the website design, something that may happen every 1 or 2 years. And in the bottom of that list, they had some video projects that they were doing every 2 or 3 months. Next up, the high frequency, high value projects. Here, the only one inside the marketing team was the brand development piece. This is the only one that had that high frequency and high value. Third, the low frequency, low value projects. Here they had the analytical decks. They were doing these every couple of months, I think. And they were lower value. They were valuing those at about the 5 to 10K point. And finally, the high frequency, low value projects. And this was a large quantity of those needs. So it includes things like the web banners, booth design, the social ads, infographics, emails, decks, and so on. So now we've mapped those needs that we covered earlier on to this matrix. Let's see how that maps to the design needs that we just talked about. Or sorry, the design services we just talked about. So first up, for the low frequency, high value projects, these are where design agencies really come into their own. They have the expertise to really deliver on these projects. They demand high fees, but for these high value projects that you're not doing so frequently, the value is often there. So next, for the high frequency, low value projects. Sorry, high frequency, high value projects. This is where having an in-house team or in-house designers really makes sense. So here, the brand development was something which this company is doing themselves in-house. In another function, just to give an example here, product design is often something which comes into this category as well. Extremely high value, and it's something which is going on an ongoing basis. And it's a competency which many companies want to build themselves in-house because it's something that they can differentiate themselves on to other companies. So that's another great example of where you want to be deploying an in-house team. So third, for the low frequency, lower value projects, this is where freelancers come into their own. So the freelancers can keep up with the lower frequency of work. And because the projects are lower value, it works within what a freelancer can do. So in this case, the analytical decks, it's great to work on with a specialized freelancer. So finally, for the high frequency, lower value projects, this is where a cloud agency really comes into their own. They're able to deliver an efficiency which works to the budget set aside for these projects, and they have the scale to work at the volume that is needed to support the teams in these cases. So to bring this to life, let me just walk through a couple of examples. So rebranding a company, this is a big undertaking, around $100,000 or more, depending on the size of the company. If you're a large enterprise, this is obviously into the millions of dollars. If you're a smaller startup, this is something which is maybe in the $10,000 to $20,000 range. Rebrands obviously can happen within departments as well. There could be sub-brands that are created which may be around this $100,000 price point. And they're a pretty infrequent need every 3 to 5 years. So obviously the best solution here is working with a specialized brand agency. But just to show you what would happen if you work with different solutions, I wanted to kind of give you some thoughts. So if you did this in-house, first, it's unlikely to have the skills. And if you do find someone who has the skills for this, what are they doing the rest of the time? Second, with freelance, this is a really big undertaking, and it's unlikely that a single freelancer has the capacity or ability to deliver a rebrand to you. Third, cloud agency. They're not necessarily going to have the expertise and skills that an in-house, that an agency would have. And also, this is something which you likely want a lot of high-touch support, a lot of face-to-face meetings, which an agency is better suited to. So second, let's look at product marketing collateral. This is something where the individual project needs may be smaller, so roughly around $1,000 for a project like this. But it's something that's needed very frequently. I mean, firstly, for each product, you're likely needing case studies, presentation decks, data sheets. And these are also things which get updated pretty regularly as the product evolves, as you get feedback from your clients. So these are things which are needed very frequently. So going back to our matrix, the best solution here is the cloud agency. So to compare this to other solutions, in-house, this is not a core competency. So investing a lot of management time building a solution in-house for this is not a good use of time. They'll also struggle with the fluctuations. So if you have a new product launch where there's a lot of demand for this material, they may be overworked. And then when there's less updates going on with the product, they may be sitting there idle. Next, freelance. They're unlikely to keep up with the volume that's needed for this type of solution. And they'll be quite hard to manage, especially across the many different design pieces that are required. And finally, with an agency, they'll be highly expensive for this type of work, and it's not necessarily their area of expertise. So with that said, I want to draw some conclusions from everything we've talked through. And we've covered quite a few things at quite a pace. Second, we introduced the concept of shadow design. You have far more needs than you think. And there's real costs to doing shadow design yourself and in an unrecognized way. Fourth, there is no one-size-fits-all design solution, especially as you're working with larger, as your company is larger. It's unlikely to find the best solution. It's a great starting point to think about the partners that you should be working with. So with that said, I want to say thank you for listening to me today. I hope you found this short webinar useful. And we've got a little time now for Q&A. And then after that, we can get you out of here early. So I'll flip across. Feel free to send messages through the chat channel, and I can answer any questions you have. And just while we're doing this, I do want to make a little apology for the technical difficulties we had at the beginning of this webinar. The joy of this being our first webinar means that we didn't quite have that fully tested out. It worked fine during the rehearsals for this, but didn't work in reality. So it looks like there's